Good morning. So, looking out on your faces, I know that many of you are on Facebook. I know that at least some of you have seen the following meme, and I know that because at least two of you have reposted it. It's the page that encourages each one of us to wish one another happy holidays, because there are at least 27 holidays, and don't hold me to that number, from at least 6 or 7 major religions in the 2 months or so around Christmas. I'm here to tell you about 2 of them. I do this recognizing that this evening marks the beginning of Hanukkah, a festival of lights, and that this is the first Sunday in Advent, with its lighting of the Advent calendar. These 2 at least made that list. Lights, lighting, enlightenment. I think I could spin out a theme here. So let me do that. First, last Tuesday marked the Catholic feast of Barlam and Jehoshaphat. Now, what would a Buddhist priest be doing recognizing a Catholic feast day? It's really simple. The story of Barlam and Jehoshaphat is the medieval retelling of the story of the Buddha, a story that made its way from the Mahayana Buddhist texts in North India, at that time the northwest of India, around 400 or so in the Common Era, through the Zoroastrians in Persia. Then, several centuries later, they passed it on to the world of Islam, who in turn passed it on to Christianity, where it's celebrated in both the Eastern Orthodox Church on a different date and in Catholicism on November 27th. The story radically repurposed the recognizable story of the Buddha. And I can tell you that it is attested in the Catholic Encyclopedia of 1913, something I know as the former director, the semi-retired director of a library that desperately needs its reference works updated. So there's speculation that contacts went in both directions, not simply from Buddhist texts making their way silently and stealthily to Christianity, but also Christian ideas making their way east to Buddhism. In my particular school, we venerate bodhisattvas, and there is a good reason to believe that the whole notion of a bodhisattva, a being who chooses to remain behind on earth to save all beings, despite the fact that he or she is easily worthy of heaven and enlightenment, that this story really owes a great deal to the story of Jesus. But last Tuesday was a minor holiday and probably isn't recognized among the august 27 that are mentioned in Facebook. I'm hoping, though I haven't seen that list, that next Saturday's holiday is on it. Next Saturday is December 8th. In East Asian Buddhism, this is the anniversary of the enlightenment of the Buddha. Zen Buddhists call it Rohatsu and often celebrate it by meditating all night long, having feasted that evening on a thin soup made from the previous day's meals. I think we could probably learn something from Catholicism. So, Siddhartha Gautama left his father's palace and his family, practiced austerities for 6 years, and finally is said to have sat under the Bodhi tree, having vowed not to get up until he achieved enlightenment. I should note that the Bodhi tree is often identified as a ficus religiosa, a fig tree. I could see why someone would choose to sit under a fig tree. I'm very fond of them. He sat through the night, calling on the earth as his witness when tempted by the demon Mara. And that morning, when he saw the morning star, his world cracked open and he stepped forth saying, I and the great earth and beings simultaneously achieve the way. I and the great earth and beings simultaneously achieve the way. Not simply Siddhartha, who from that moment on was known as the Buddha, a word which means simply to be awake. Not simply the Buddha, but the great earth and all beings. We all achieve the way. We all have been and are awake to our own nature. In Zen, we say that each of us is enlightened. Each of us knows our own true nature, our original face, that we've simply forgotten. And we meditate, we sit zazen in order to remember that. Echoes of more Western philosophers, Socrates and Plato, the Crito, who sat down with a young slave boy and by questioning him showed that he had known all of geometry, he simply had forgotten. Another echo from Athens to northeastern India. Having achieved enlightenment, Siddhartha, the Buddha, could have simply continued to sit under that Bodhi tree and happily lived out the rest of his days. But for the Buddha, his awakening was not enough. The world, the universe was filled with beings who could be encouraged to awaken. And so he stood up and took that first step into a 45-year teaching career. The path from Siddhartha Gautama to the Bodhi tree has more twists and turns than this simple sermon, this simple talk suggests. I'll save it for another time. I don't suggest that you try to glean the story from the medieval Christian tale of Barlaam and Jehoshaphat, however. It's a little bit too weird. So what do we do with this awakening? It's easy to follow the Buddha's first inclination and just sit and luxuriate in your own awakening. But that was not his course. The priest Cheng Sha said, "You who sit at the top of a 100-foot pole, although you've entered the way, it's not yet genuine. Take a step from the top of that pole, and the worlds in the 10 directions are your total body." This glimpse of the vastness of space, of boundlessness, of the interconnection of all beings is not enough. Like the Buddha, we must step off that peak of enlightenment from the top of the 100-foot pole and re-enter the world of form, the world where compassion lies. There's a well-known series of illuminations known as the 10 ox-herding pictures, depicting the seeking of enlightenment as a search for an elusive ox. They culminate in a picture of emptiness, but end with the seeker returning to the marketplace with bliss-bestowing hands, as the caption often relates. A call to the return of the world of form, the world where people suffer and are in need. The world of the boundless, the world of form, these are the same, and at the same time different. The intimacy of boundlessness that tells us that you and I are one is the intimacy that each one of us experiences in confronting the pain of another. When we reach out from that boundlessness, when we do it before thought. Much as Christians are encouraged not to tell the left hand, not to let the left hand know what the right hand is doing. Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion, is often depicted as having hundreds of arms arrayed around his or her body. She's gender fluid. She starts in India as male. She crosses the Himalayas and appears as a woman. And also, there are those of us who wind up looking at the Virgin Mary as simply an incarnation of this bodhisattva of compassion. It's a clever, the hundreds of arms, the thousands of arms, is a clever way to depict arms moving so quickly as to give aid and comfort, that they appear to number in the hundreds. In a koan in the Blue Cliff Record, Yunyan asked Dao Wu, "What does the bodhisattva of great compassion use so many hands and eyes for?" Dao Wu said, "It's like someone reaching back, groping for a pillow in the middle of the night. Not without thought, but before thought." And so on that morning, 2,500 years or so ago, this coming Saturday, the Buddha got up from his meditation seat, stepped off the 100-foot pole, and re-entered the world of pain and suffering and invited each one of us to do the same. Thank you.